Welcome to the Elevate Your Equity podcast, where we, as married busy professionals, leverage real estate investing to unlock the 3+1 degrees of freedom: health, location, time, and financial. And now, here's your host, Derek Clifford.
Hey guys, this is Derek.
And this is Sophie.
And we are glad to see you guys. We are here to recap the last episode that we had, which was with Chris Freeman. And on this episode, we talked about growth and W-2 exit, and definitely took a lot away from that podcast. And I know that you will too, if you are able to go back and listen to that one. But there was a couple of key things that I wanted to talk about with you, the audience, and also with Sophie. And I think that the first thing is that in this business, or in any business at all, I heard from Chris that longevity, it supports you over the long run and helps make you successful. So if you can stick with something and be consistent for a really long time, it feels like there's really no end to your success as long as you're sticking with it. So that was one of the key takeaways. Did you have anything that you want to add about longevity in general?
Absolutely. And you hear over and over that, nothing happens overnight. There is no such thing as an overnight success story, even though it may seem that way. And so there are many stories about entrepreneurs and people who really have this non-linear journey towards their overall success. And I think that lends well to the longevity piece.
I totally agree with that. I think that there's a lot of businesses out there, and it's easy to see why now because Sophie and I are in the middle of it, but there's a lot of businesses out there that just end up failing because they don't stick with it for long enough. And I forgot what the stat was, but I think it was something like 1 out of every 20 businesses make it longer than 3 years. And then of those businesses, 1 in 10 make it an additional 2 or 3 years, I think. And then at that point, it's a success. Obviously, if a business sticks around for that long, they're doing something right. So I think longevity is definitely a key. And then being consistent, even if you're working a full-time job and doing this on the side, that long-term ability to stick with it is going to make up for the fact that you can't just jump full on into it if you have a full-time job. So that's number one. The second thing that I took away from Chris Freeman's podcast was organizations and process, and how automating and setting up processes enable you to do pretty much the impossible. If you have a process that is basically stepping in for you, whether it's a virtual assistant or an integrator or someone that can help you with something, or maybe it's even a technology tool like Calendly or something like that. It's a really incredible way to kind of scale up your business. And one example that I have for Sophie in particular, do you remember when you had Charm EHR for your practice? Mm-hmm. And then we ended up switching over to this thing called, I think it's Practice Better, right? Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit about how that process helped you.
Yeah. So, as if you don't know what I do, I have a medical practice. I've taken it completely virtual now. So that happened during March 2020 when COVID hit and it shut down my entire office operation, and just people couldn't come into my office to see me. So it was a little bit scary in the beginning because I had a front desk. I had people helping me, had a team. And what had happened was, now that I was solo, I was forced to figure out how to establish these systems like Derek was talking about, these organizations, these processes. Well, I had a system that helped me keep track of my chart notes, but it didn't help me keep track of scheduling. It didn't help me keep track of billing and things like that. And so found this new system, and it did everything for me, automated everything. And it was like I had a team of, I had my team again. And so it saves so much time. Another thing I'd like to add too is that oftentimes we think about creating systems to make our lives easier. This just came to mind too, like, how do we have systems for setting up systems? So in terms of, if you want to automate things, is there a system that you typically start off with where you write down everything that you're doing and everything that you want to hand over to somebody? before you actually hand it over to somebody to create those systems, right? What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's awesome. I think that having like a system to create systems, or having like a list to be able to say, okay, this is something I know that needs to be automated. It helps you figure out on a granular scale whether you need a team member or you need a tool, or both, right? And I think that that understanding brings your business a whole new level of legitimacy. And so I love that you mentioned that. And I think that that's a great complement to what Chris was talking about with organization, being organized, having a process that can help amplify your output. Because if you're spending time like Sophie was, being in the admin work side, like trying to just schedule time for, to meet with people, that's time that you could be doing working your craft, right?
Mhm.
Instead of like talking schedules and be like, oh, I can't do 4 o'clock, how about 5? That's just it's such a waste, right, of potential there. So there's tools that can step in for that.
Right. And of course, really stepping into your strengths and what you're good at. So oftentimes when all of us as entrepreneurs, we find ourselves wearing so many different hats. And oftentimes we're not good at a majority of those hats that we're wearing. So like Derek said, maybe it's good to delegate, to hand it over to somebody who does it a lot faster, a lot better, and making sure that you know the end goal of what you want to accomplish and the outcome.
Yeah, I love that. That's awesome. So we hit that point. I think the last thing that I wanted to say that I really took away from Chris Freeman's episode was goal setting in daily practice. Something that he talked about in there was that he had an actual tool that he used for goal setting that helps you keep perspective on the bigger goals. Which was super cool. And that's something that we're going to be taking away, or at least I certainly am, is if you have this massive goal, like back when we were supposed to be going to Japan, which is now no longer happening, I wanted to make sure that I did about 20 to 30 minutes of Japanese learning every single day, right, in the morning. And one thing that I use, and obviously Chris talks about what he uses inside the podcast, so please go back and listen to that if you're interested there. But one thing that I use was I just built it into my morning routine. Like anything that I wanted to do in the long term, I just brought it in for 20 or 30 minutes on top of anything else that I wanted to do, and just expanded my morning routine on top of exercise, meditation, journaling, and reading. I brought another 30 minutes for Japanese, then I brought another 30 minutes for doing a course, right, that I'm working on right now. And so if you do that, you knock that stuff out at the very beginning of the day before you have time to even think about it. And there's also tools like using a calendar, right? And then just literally like checking things off if you're a process-oriented person or detail-oriented and you can remember to do that, putting it up on your monitor or putting it up in your office so it's visible every day so that you can hold yourself accountable to make sure you're checking it off. So I thought that was cool. I don't know. What do you think about that?
Absolutely. I think you have to have goals, first of all, and you have to have systems for reaching your goals. And that, of course, requires the consistency, the daily practice, and the having your goals at the forefront. And so, like Derek said, have them anywhere that they're visible, review them, just revamp them just to make sure that you're on track. And then I would add to have people who can hold you accountable to those goals and make sure that you have a group of people, or even yourself, and, just a weekly check-in with yourself saying, is everything you're doing on your, on path to helping you reach those goals? Because sometimes we can do things and feel like we're on this hamster wheel and we're just doing things and we feel so productive, but we're not really reaching the end vision that we want. And so again, sometimes it takes people to say, hey, you're doing this, and yes, you're productive, but is it keeping you on track? And that's something that is really, that's something really important for me, because I love feeling productive. I love checking things off my to-do list. But oftentimes, if it's not helping you reach your goal, then it may actually be counterproductive.
Yeah, I totally agree. I love this that you said that, Sophie, because that's super, super important. And I do think too that like you can even use your spouse, right? Your spouse may be the person that you can use to hold you accountable. We've found that while that does work, we found that we best use when we put on our hats, right? We have people that we work with that are in our accountability groups that run in different circles, and we've been working with them for a long time. Like, they're our close friends. Those circles are starting to kind of move together here in the last couple of weeks and months. But we do think that whoever you can find, even if it's your spouse, to hold you accountable, to have that conversation, man, that's such a good point. So anyway, I think that's a good takeaway. We're going to kind of leave it there for that. We're going to leave it at that point for you guys. And please, whenever you guys, if you like this content, please like, subscribe, or comment wherever you're watching this. And please share this podcast with anyone that you feel might think that they need it, or you might think that they need it. That would be really great. And we're just looking forward to talking with you guys again. So please click any of the links in the description if you want to find out more about what we do, where we are, our travels, anything like that. That should be in the links there for you. So we're looking forward to seeing you next time. Take care.